All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. You are joining Aparo's Nonprofit Bites and Insights. These are our free webinar series where we bring in experts and speakers from all different industries to come share their knowledge and expertise with nonprofit professionals like you. So this series is focused around collaborating in the cloud, more specifically file sharing. Last week, we kicked it off with a focus around Microsoft 365. If you didn't get a chance to join us, but want to be sure to review it, that recording is online on our webpage. You will get a follow-up email from me. I'll be sure to include that link directly, so you'll have access to it. Today, we are going to deep dive into Google Drive. So before I turn it over to Ross, a few other housekeeping details. So this webinar is being recorded as well. That follow-up email that you receive from me will include the link to this recording as well as last week's recording. Slide decks will also be included, as well as any other resources that we might talk about today. Q&A and chat box is available for you to use. Ross is amazing at monitoring that, so please feel free to drop in any comments, questions at any time throughout the presentation. If you'd like to use closed captioning, that is available for you to use as well. So before I turn it over to him, a little bit more detail about Aparo and what we do in case you are new to us. So we are a nonprofit based in Charlotte, North Carolina. And what we do is we help other nonprofits with their technology and business process needs and challenges. The way that we do that is connect nonprofits with skilled volunteers and corporations in the community. And together we help support that nonprofit with their challenges, become more efficient so that they can amplify their impact in the population that they serve. Our services are broken up into 3 categories. We have advice, education, and solutions. If you're a new nonprofit, you will go through our advice section first. This is where you'll meet one-on-one with a tech therapist, and they'll talk to you about your challenges, your needs, and make sure you get connected with the right service. So that might look like one-on-one coaching. It might be getting connected with a vetted vendor. It might be a team training, or it might be connecting with a team to make sure you're getting a solution that is right for you and your nonprofit. These are the different ways to connect with us. So if or when you decide you want to access our services, the best way is to go to our webpage and submit a request form. You can also subscribe to our email list to just stay updated on our events and programming. My contact information is there as well. If you'd like to reach out to me, I'd be happy to connect you to the right place. And then if you like what we do, please do consider writing a short Google review for us. That is it for me. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go ahead and turn it over to Ross.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. Let me get my screen share set up, and then I need to go ahead and pull up the chat and the Q&A so I can see that. I'm so glad that everyone started chatting already. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the Q&A, and I will happily answer them. Yenting's original invite asked some registration questions, and so along with those, I added to the presentation today to try and answer some of those questions. If you feel like your question wasn't answered, please let me know. I'm going to drop some links in the chat in a moment when I get to that slide. So my name is Ross Feldman. I am the digital advisor, virtual CIO of CCP Tech. CCP Tech is a managed service provider or outsourced IT here in Charlotte. We also have offices in Charleston and DC, clients all over the Southeast and California. And we have a percentage of our portfolio, about 10% of our portfolio is nonprofit organizations. So we have a little bit of a specialty going on, and I'm heading up that part of the portfolio. Today, I'm going to be talking about Google Workspace and Google Drive. Last week, I spoke about 365. So we've got Microsoft versus Google. A couple of you guys did ask that question during registration, which is, let's see, how did you phrase this? are there advantages to G Suite versus Microsoft when it comes to file sharing? I believe that you should work in the environment or the ecospace that you are already set up in. So if you are using Gmail, Google Drive, Google Workspace, that's what you should use for file sharing. If you're using Microsoft Outlook, Microsoft 365, you should use their OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. So staying inside of the ecosystem that you're already in probably makes the most sense. Asking someone if Google or Microsoft is better could be like asking, is Honda or Toyota better? Everybody has their opinions. Most of my team is a Microsoft 365 team. I've been using Google Workspace for the last 20 years. Everybody has their pros and cons. I like to think that Microsoft 365 is a little better at scale with a larger organization, and sometimes Google Workspace is a little easier for a 1 or 2 or smaller organization. So I tend to put larger organizations into Microsoft 365, and for simplicity's sake, Google Workspace for the smaller ones. But 365 can handle a small organization. So if you're picking for a new organization, we would put you in 365 if we were setting you up. But some organizations have taken advantage of Google Workspace because TechSoup nonprofit pricing, you can get 2,000 or something licenses from Google Workspace, whereas with 365, you're only getting 10 premium licenses. So pros and cons, it's a decision to be made based on your organization. Unfortunately, the naming convention can be confusing. Google Drive, there are 2 flavors. There's your personal Google Drive, and then there's your Google Drive that's inside Google Workspace for work. So when you have a work organization, you're using Google Workspace. When you just stand up a personal Gmail account or a personal Google account, you're just using the personal version of Google Drive. So in a personal Google Drive, those are free. To start, you just sign up with a Gmail account, but you can sign up with any email address as well with your personal Google account, and you get 15 gigabytes of storage for free. For Google Drive and Google Workspace, it's included as part of your Google Workspace subscription. So it's not free on its own, but it's included with what you're paying for or getting through TechSoup with your Google Workspace. It uses that work account. So the Big Brothers Big Sisters organization that's on this call, it would be their @BigBrothers domain, not @gmail.com. I have seen several businesses, organizations do Google Drive by using @Gmail addresses. And one of the questions that came in the registration was managing multiple Google accounts. You should not be trying to manage multiple Google accounts. You should just be using Google Workspace and managing it that way. So what I'm going to do a little later in the call is I'm going to drop in my calendar invite so we can have a consultation call and discuss more about your need to clean up whatever you may have going on with your Google Workspace. With both personal Google Drive and Google Workspace, if you need more room, you can be able to get more storage. With Google Drive Personal, you can buy packages, monthly packages with more storage space. 100 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte. With Google Drive and Google Workspace, you have to move your subscription up to the next tier plan. So let me go ahead and dive into that a little more. When I talk about Google Workspace, I'm actually talking about 3 products in one. Your Gmail for email, Google Drive for file storage, and Google Photos for storing photos and photo albums. Those 3 products come together as your storage space. So when I'm talking about your storage space, it includes all 3 of those products in your pool of storage. There are 3 plans that are out there: Business Starter, Business Standard, and Business Plus. With Business Starter, you get 30 gigabytes, so that's twice what you would get with Personal for each Google Drive. Business Standard gets you 2 terabytes per user. Business Plus gets you 5 terabytes per user. That compares to OneDrive for Business, where you get 1 terabyte per user, so you get more storage space on Google's Workspace product than you would out of the box with OneDrive in 365. Google has announced that they're doing a new pooled storage. So Yenting might get 30 gigs, Stephanie might get 30 gigs. Yenting uses 24 gigs, Stephanie uses 2 gigs, but they're limited to what storage they were given. What they're going to do now for new Google Workspace accounts and for existing accounts, they're rolling it out slowly, where they're going to pool that storage together. So if Yenting needs 34 gigs, she would get from that pooled storage that would be left available from Stephanie's account. So that's pretty cool that they're offering pooled storage now. It's a new feature rolling out. In Google Drive, there are 2 different types of drives, My Drive and shared drives. This compares to Microsoft 365, where you have your OneDrive for Business, which would be My Drive, and then you have Teams or SharePoint, which is your shared drives. Unfortunately, this feature is not available on Business Starter. It's only available on Business Standard and Business Plus. So when we had those 3 tiers, it's that middle and that high tier that have shared drives versus that beginning tier, you only have My Drive. My Drive, I'm going to kind of dive into the difference between My Drive and shared drive in these 2 situations, but I put 2 screenshots. The left screenshot is Google Drive Online, and then the right screenshot is Google Drive on your Windows or Mac desktop. So some folks are not familiar, but Google Drive, they may be visiting the website. They may not realize you can actually download a program to access these drives right there in Windows Explorer or in Mac Finder. And it's much more powerful for folks to be able to clean up and organize their files. Some of you guys did ask about that in the registration, is how do you organize your files? I would recommend downloading the Google Drive desktop app so that you can rearrange them in File Explorer versus trying to navigate all of this online. So My Drive versus the shared drive. Again, you have to have that higher tier Google Workspace plan to be able to get shared drives. But what My Drive is your personal file storage. I like to think of it like this example of a desk with a file cabinet under it. It's your files that you keep. Now you can share those files out with others. People can come to your desk and be able to access those files, but it's attached to you and your individual account. If you leave the organization and your account gets deleted, your files will get deleted as well. When your administrator goes to delete your Google Workspace account, they will be prompted of where to move the files to, and you would probably want to move the files to either a new associate who's taking over the responsibilities of the exiting associate, or move it to the supervisor or manager of that associate, so those files do not get lost. I'm going to dive into that ownership in a future slide. So that shared drive is the file cabinet that's out in the hallway. So we had the file cabinet that's under the desk. Out in the hallway is that shared group file storage. This is really where you want to put most of your files. You want them in the shared drive. Again, so ownership doesn't get locked in. And if someone decides to leave the organization, those files don't get accidentally deleted when their account gets deleted. So your team can go access what's in the shared drive, and it's all automatically shared with them, so you don't have to reshare files again. I want to take a quick breather. That's halfway through my slides. Again, you guys can use the Q&A and the chat feature that is inside of here. I don't have any questions in the Q&A or the chat as of this moment, but feel free to use those both, and I'll happily answer those questions. Sharing files and folders. When you're inside of a file, this right-hand side, when you're inside Google Docs or inside Google Sheets, there's a button on the upper right-hand corner that says share, and that's where you click on it. And you can invite people to read or edit this file by putting in their email address. You also, on the left-hand screenshot, have the option when you're inside of Google Drive to select the three dots when you highlight a file and share it that way. So you can share it from within a doc, or you can share it from the Google Drive screen itself. When you get invited to collaborate on a file, you'll get an email that the file's been shared with you. Folks go looking either for that email or that file, and they're not quite sure. So on the left-hand side, there is shared with me in Google Drive, which will show you files that someone else created that they shared with you. So shared with me are not your files, but files that you've been granted access to. I said a little bit earlier, I was going to go into that file folder ownership. If you see the first screenshot, it's an example of a file that I created. So it says owner is me. If you look at these other screenshots, these are files that have been shared with me, and they've been created and shared by others. And it says the name of who created and shared the file, and it adds that little person icon next to the file, so you know that it's a shared file. Google has your data across multiple data centers. So if a data center loses power or internet, they have another data center that has your files. So when you're trying to access a file from the cloud, it will route you to whichever data center is closest and online. While Google does do this service, they're actually not responsible for your data. So if you lose your files or Google loses your files, it's not their fault. They're only responsible for the underlying architecture, Google Drive as an infrastructure, or the data centers, but they're not responsible for your files. So I recommend you work with your IT service provider to back up those files away from Google. If there was a major service interruption or data corruption, you want to use those backups to restore your data. So definitely work with your IT service provider to make sure that your Google Workspace files are backed up. One of the questions that came in, actually a few of the questions, were surrounding about security. Google Drive security is actually driven off of your Google account. So when you set up your Google account, new accounts, they're going to have you set up what's called two-step verification or two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. But Microsoft calls it multi-factor authentication. Google calls it two-step verification, 2SV. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop these links that are in my slide presentation into the chat here. So let me copy this, paste this. So if you have not yet set up two-step verification on your Google account, I highly recommend you do that today. What this does is if someone for some reason has your password, they will not be able to access your account because it's going to prompt you with that pop-up on your phone or that text message to verify your identity, and that's going to protect you. Set up account recovery is if you can't remember your password or you're unable to reset your password, adding a phone number or email address that Google can reach out to you in case you lose that connection that allows you to recover your account. Again, Google on new accounts has been popping this up, but if you have an existing account, this may not be set up. So it's worth, again, today checking to make sure that you do have an email address and a phone number in your recovery settings inside your Google account. The last thing is if you're using Google Workspace, your Google Workspace administrator can be able to set your external sharing settings. You can reduce the ability for folks to share content out of your environment to others if you feel like your organization needs that level of security, it's definitely worth having that discussion with your Google administrator to make sure that your environment is set up the way your organization functions. All right. We've got another question that had come in the registration is, how do I find my files quickly? There is something in here in Gmail and in Google Drive called starred. So you can star an email to find it quickly under starred. You can also star a file. If you're accessing a file on a regular basis, you can star the file. And then you'll see it on the left-hand side where it says starred, which is just below the section that says recent. Recent are the files that you've recently interacted with. So hopefully those two sections on the left-hand side will help you find your files quickly. This is my last slide of the slide deck. So if you ask your questions in the registration and you feel like you have additional follow-up questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A. And I'll try to answer them as best as possible. Some of the questions were a little vague, so I tried my best to answer them, but definitely I want to make sure you get your questions answered and you get the knowledge that you need. The last thing I was going to show was how to quickly find files using search. At the top of Google Drive, there's a search bar where you can type in the name of the file or verbiage that's inside the file, but to the right of the search box, there's three little sliders that indicates search filters. So you click on that, and someone was asking about how to find older files. So in here where it says date modified, I have it highlighted. You could be able to say files that are older than 2 years, some date 2 years ago. You can search by that and find your older files that way. Okay, so that was the end of my slide deck based on the based on the slide deck of questions that you guys have asked. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop my Calendly inside of the chat. Calendly is a really cool tool if you haven't used it, just allowing your calendar to be bookable. I find it so much easier. There's a lot of time spent going back and forth by email, trying to find availability. I just find it so much easier to say, here's my calendar, my availability, click book away. I'm always available to answer questions or follow up with this. And I know that there are folks that are going to watch on the recording. So Yenting is going to put that in the email with my Calendly link and my contact information, as well as some of these links and the presentation. Looks like there's about 12, 14 participants. Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, it was my pleasure. Yenting, I don't have any questions asked at the moment, but I'll give everybody a few more minutes.
Yeah, thank you for another great presentation, Ross. Really concise and to the point, and I love it. And I think you did a great job answering all the questions that came through registration. As people are figuring out their questions, I had a question around, so in Microsoft 365, when you share your file, you have that copy link and you can denote which email addresses can access it and all that, really different, all those different options. Does Google Drive have that same option?
Exactly. So when you're inside the file, there's a share button on the top, and you type in the email address. And as you type in the email address, there's going to be a drop down next to the email address that gives them the ability to be a viewer or an editor. So if you just want someone to be able to view the file, you can click view. And if you want them to be able to collaborate with you, you can set them as an editor.
And then this is both for internal and external.
Correct. Yeah, you can share externally. And again, the slide that had the external sharing settings, your administrator can lock down the ability to share files outside of the organization if you so feel that your organization should function that way. Another quiet crowd again, Yenting.
Oh, another quiet crowd. Well, I have an additional question. It's kind of outside of this, but I'm curious to know. So I signed up for Google One. I don't really know what it is. Can you talk to me about what I signed up for?
Love to. It comes along with Google Phones. You can also sign up for it separately. It's a few additional perks. Google One will give you more storage space. It will also give you the ability to use their VPN, virtual private network, that you can download on your phone, your Android phone, or on your desktop, which it tunnels your traffic. So if you're in a public space, an airport or coffee shop, and there's not a password on the network and you don't want people to watch and sniff out what you're doing, you can connect that VPN to be able to tunnel your traffic out of the coffee shop and encrypt it in a way that it can't be read or seen. Google is adding to their Google One offerings. They have a couple competing products, but most of this is focused on storage and security. So when I talked about having that personal Google Drive and you only have 15 gigs and you need some more space like 100 gigs, they're calling that Google One, that upgraded space.
Gotcha. And it sounds like there's that added security, which is great. Is that only for personal drive or is that also for workspace?
Yeah, Google One is a personal offering. Google Workspace has the same features. They just have it with your different licensing subscription tiers.
So thank you for that.
Awesome.
All right, well, if there are no other questions coming through, we're going to end about half an hour early. So everyone on the call, you'll be getting a follow-up email from me. I'll be sure to include Ross's Calendly link as well. So feel free to use that at any time if you don't have any questions right now. And then if you need to reach out to me, feel free to reply and I'll be happy to help you. Other than that, Ross, thank you so much for your time and for putting all this entire series together. Really appreciate you, and everyone have a great rest of the day.
My pleasure. Thanks so much. Thanks for coming, everybody. Have a great one.